Hi friends, welcome back to our video series Multiplayer Game Development. Today we are going to discuss about some of the differences and similarities between the TCP and UDP. In the previous videos we have discussed some of the models which are used to transfer data from one computer to another computer, like a YSI model, then TCP IP model. So these are the models which we use to understand the concept of sending data from one computer to another computer. One of the most important layers of this model is the transport layer, and the transport layer uses mainly the UDP and TCP to send the data from one computer to another computer. So first we will talk about what is a TCP. So TCP, the full form of a TCP is Transmission Control Protocol. So it is used to transfer the data from one computer to another computer. So the main characteristic of the TCP model is that the sender first establishes a connection with the receiver. After that only it sends the data. Okay, so this transport layer receives the data from its upper layers, and after receiving this data, it divides this data to smaller segments and sends these segments to the receiver computer. So, before sending this data, what TCP does is that it establishes a connection, like it just informs the receiver computer that I am going to send some packages. Okay, I am going to send some packages to you. Are you ready to accept those packages? So then what a receiver does? Receiver will acknowledge this message and inform the sender computer that yes, I am ready to receive those data and you can send those. So like this, after establishing a connection, then only the sender will send those packages to the receiver. So that is the one of the main characteristic of the TCP. But when we talk about UDP, so next we will talk about UDP. UDP is the full form of UDP is User Datagram Protocol. Okay, so the main characteristic of UDP is that it is a connectionless protocol. So it doesn't care about whether the receiver is ready to accept those data or packages or not. As soon as it receives the data from its upper layers, what it will does is that it sends this data to the receiver. So it doesn't care about whether the receiver is ready or not to accept those files. So that is the main difference between the TCP and UDP. First, TCP establishes a connection. After that only it sends the data. Okay, but in UDP it doesn't care about whether a connection is established. It starts sending the data as soon as it receives it. So you can say that it has this TCP has got some manners. It is well managed, but a UDP doesn't have any manners like that. It just sends the data without checking whether the receiver is ready or not. So that is the one of the differences between the TCP and UDP. TCP is a connection-oriented protocol, but this UDP is a connectionless protocol. So that is the one of the main differences between TCP and UDP. Next, we will talk about the how the data is the guarantee to which the data is sent from one computer to another computer. So when you are sending a data, then the TCP gives you a guarantee that it is going to reach the receiver's computer. Okay, so if you are sending, for example, three packages, okay, and this receiver receives one and three packages, but it didn't receive the second package, then what it will do, it will just inform the sender that I didn't receive the second packet. Okay, so the sender can again send the second packet to the receiver and make sure that it receives that second packet. So after receiving the second packet, this receiver acknowledges that it received the second packet. So it makes sure that the sender makes sure that all the three packets are received by the receiver. So when you talk about this guarantee, that it makes sure that TCP makes sure that all the packages that it is sending will reach the receiver. But in UDP, it doesn't care about that. So if it is sending three packets, whether you are receiving that packet or not, that is your problem, not the sender's problem. So it is whether you are sending three packets, and if you lose the second packet, then that is your luck. So it is your bad luck that you lost that. It will not send it back. Okay, so that is the another difference between the TCP and the UDP. TCP makes sure that the whatever data it is sending, it is received by the receiver. But in a UDP, it won't give you any guarantee. So if when you are sending a data, the receiver may receive it or it may not receive it. That is the receiver's problem. So that is the another difference between the TCP and the UDP. So next we will talk about the header of files. So when you talk about the header files, so header file is that the transport layer receives the data as a pure data. Okay, so it receives only that data. So you cannot send that data just like that to the receiver. So for example, you are writing a letter to your friend in another state or another country. So after just writing the letter, you cannot just sit and wait and you hope that it will reach your friend. It doesn't happen that way. What you have to do is that after writing the letter, you have to post that you have to put that in an envelope. Okay, after that you have to write the proper address of your friend. Then you have to give that to the post office. Then only it will send the it will reach the receiver. If you didn't give the proper address, then it will not reach the this receiver's computer. So this transport layer makes sure that it adds all these details. So it makes sure that all the data, which the address data is attached to this data before sending. Okay, so when you talk about the TCP adds more details, okay, in the data than the UDP. Okay, so the file size, the package size of TCP will be higher than the UDP. Okay, so that is the another difference between the TCP and the UDP. In the TCP, the header size will be much higher than the UDP. So that is the another difference between the two. So next we will talk about the order in which the packets arrive. Okay, so for example, if you are sending a message to your friend like a hello, how are you? Okay, so in TCP, it makes sure that this message reaches in the proper order of hello, how are you to your as a receiver's computer. So, like I mentioned, that it is a connection-oriented protocol. First, this establishes a connection between the sender and the receiver, and through that connection only it sends these data. So first it will send hello, then it will send how, then it will send R, then U. Okay, so it will send, for example, it will send like that. So it will make sure that this data will reach the receiver in the same order, like a hello, how are you? Because uh, it is taking only one network. It is taking only one route to reach the receiver. But in a UDP, it is not like that. In a UDP, it can use the different networks. Okay, so if the hello will pass in network number one, and how will pass in the through the network number two. Then if a network number two is faster than the network number one, then how will reach before hello. So it will not, the message that is received by the computer may not be in the same order as you sent. Okay, so that is the another difference between the TCP and UDP. TCP is it follows the one network so that it will reach the receiver in the proper order. But the UDP can use the different networks to reach the receiver, so you cannot guarantee that it will reach in the proper order. So TCP's priority is that it reaches the maybe it may be slow, but it will reach the receiver in a proper order. But the UDP's only concern is that to send this data to the receiver. It doesn't care about whether it is going to reach in the same order in which these packets are sent. Okay, so that is the another difference between the TCP and the UDP. Then when we talk about the speed of these two protocols, so like I mentioned, TCP has to first make a connection, establish a connection, then only it will send the data. And when it is sending the data, also it makes sure that all the data is reached in the receiver's computer, that too in the proper order. So it takes more time in sending all the data from one computer to another computer. UDP, it doesn't care about establishing a connection. It doesn't guarantee you that all the data will be reached, and it takes the different routes. So it reaches the data reaches the receiver in a faster than the TCP. So you can say that UDP is faster than TCP. Okay, so that is because the TCP makes sure that the data reaches the receiver's computer in a proper order and without losing any data. But UDP doesn't care about that, so it is faster than TCP. And the next difference is that the UDP doesn't care about at what speed this receiver can receive the data. So if the server is sending data, for example, a 5 MB per second, and your mobile cannot process that much data, like a 5 MB per second, it can process maybe 3 MB of data per second. So this UDP doesn't care about that. UDP just send you the data in that same speed, but you will not be able to process that much of data at that time. So what happens is that you will lose the some of the data which is sent by the sender. But TCP takes care of whether you can process that much of data in that time. So if you cannot process, if your mobile cannot process that much of data, like a 5 MB per second, then what it does is that it will slow down the speed in which this sends the data to the receiver. So that is the another difference between the UDP and TCP. TCP takes care of whether the receiver can process that much of data at that time, or then according to that it will adjust the speed at which it sends the data. But in UDP, it doesn't care about that. It will send that data in that speed only. Then whether you will lose that data or whether you will not be able to handle that much of data, then that is your problem. So it won't care about that. Okay, so that is the another difference between TCP and UDP. So now let us see some of the examples or the cases where these both the protocols are used. So TCP is used when you want to make sure that all the data is reached safely to the receiver. So for example, you are sending a file to your boss. So when you send a mail or when you send a file to your boss, it is not necessary that he will he will open that mail or in at the same time. So he may check that his mail maybe after 1 hour or a couple of hours, maybe in the next day. So what is more important is that you want the data to be received by your boss without losing any data. So if you are sending that data and if you lose some of the packets, maybe your boss won't be able to open that. Then at that time you will be in trouble. So to avoid that, you want to make sure that all the data is sent properly. Even though it is a little bit late, you want everything to be reached properly. At that time, you can use TCP. So TCP is used when you are using the protocols like HTTPS or FTP. Then at that time you use the TCP. But for example, but if you are watching a movie and you can compromise on the quality of the video, but you want to see this video without any interruption, then you can use UDP. So in those cases, you don't care much about the quality. You care about the speed. Okay, so in a speed at which you can see those video. In those cases, you can use UDP. And next, when you are playing a game, when you are playing a multiplayer game and you are making a move, and uh, you want this data to be sent to the other computer. But in those cases, like if you are making a move and you cannot send this data, you cannot afford to think okay, I have made a move and this data will reach the other computers or other players in next day. You cannot think like that. So whenever you make a move, at that time only you want this data to be received by the receiver. So in those cases, you can use UDP, where you give more priority to the speed than the whether you are this all this data is received by the receiver or not. So these are the some of the uses of TCP and UDP, and we have also mentioned some of the differences between the two. So I hope you understood some of the differences between the TCP and the UDP, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much.